As many of you know, some changes are coming to this channel. Visually, for one, this set, while it will always remain, will be expanded or extended to include a new room, because I've been working on that. Okay, I paid an artist too, but I'm claiming all the credit. I will, of course, when that's done, be using it. I cannot wait to show you. Along with myself, my avatar, will be getting updated to be a bit more me and a little less clone. Most of those changes will come into effect early 2019. I guess it all depends on how long it takes my background artist to finish. I kind of want to introduce both at the same time, but we will see. Now, before we get into the subject of today's video, I want to make another amendment to how to deal with sex offenders and videos where I have been told to think carefully, have thought carefully, but then overlooked something that I really shouldn't have because it never actually occurred to me that this could in fact happen. Which is weird because I've actually made a video on something very similar in all but one element. So as many of you know, I receive Facebook messages. Somebody reached out to me. I'm not going to tell you their name, and I'm not going to give too much away with regards to the specifics of the case. The reason for that is because this person has done the very best they could to move on with their life, regardless of how difficult somebody has made it for them. Now they hooked up with someone who led them to believe they were of a certain age, a legal age. They then subsequently plied the man who had arranged to meet up with this young lady, who was younger than she said, with alcohol, to the point where he was completely out of it. She then raped him. He was then arrested, given a rather nasty little sentence, but made to sign the sex offenders register for 25 years. Because even though the minor in question, while lying that they were in fact 21, admitted to getting the man drunk, intoxicated to the point where he could not know what was going on, and admitted to raping him, he was made or held to account. Which raises a very interesting question that I would love to know what you all think about. Did he commit a crime when everything was done to deceive him on the other end? Now there are those that use that kind of tactic to sting people, Chris Hansen being a perfect example with that sex offender program, I think it's called. In any case, I personally, having looked into this, I feel so guilty for this guy, and it reminded me of a case where a woman held a gun to her ex-boyfriend and forced him into her, which is rape. We can all agree with this. Okay, it's not the same kind of case, but it is that same instance where a woman has taken advantage of a man under a rather interesting set of circumstances and not been held to account for what they did. But because this features a minor, it kind of puts me in a very odd position. How desperate was this person to have sex with someone older, to then subsequently be okay with him getting screwed by the system, and still to this day be going out of their way to make his life difficult. Now he has since moved on, thankfully. He has a decent job, he is married and has kids. But that 25-year stretch on the register, well, that just makes things really bad now, doesn't it? And raises many alarming questions about the process itself because of the circumstances. I'm keen to know what you all think, to be honest. I know that it is quite weird that I'm not going to go into more specifics, but having looked into it, I firmly believe, while he and I had a very good discussion in DMs about this, it would be wrong of me to put him on blast, and her of course, although I am a firm believer that karma really is a bitch. What goes around and everything, do good things and good things happen? Yeah. I'm a Cthulhu-Kin Earl J. Hickey. Now the subject of today's video, which I guess is the second subject of today's video, since the first part has been predominantly covering that case. We're going to focus on the case of Constantine Kissin. He is a comedian who grew up under the Soviet Union, and he recently cancelled a gig at London University after he was banned from making, quotes, offensive jokes. I think we all know that as far as offensive joke goes, that could encompass virtually every aspect of comedy, life. In fact, comedy would be life, because that is a type of comedy. Any type of humour would surely fall into the bracket. I'm sure somebody has already reached out to people like Jeff Dunham and said, you sticking your hand up a dead Afghani's bottom is racist in some way. Now Constantine Kissin, sent a behavioural contract. And I know what many of you are thinking. What is a behavioural agreement form? I've added the word form because this is a behavioural agreement form. The comedy night organised by Easily Offended Snowflake Society aims to provide a safe space for everyone to come together to share and listen to comedy. Why is comedy in capitals? With all proceeds donated to UNICEF. That sounds so noble. It reminds me of nothing really. I'm expecting you to have raised maybe a couple hundred if this had happened. This is a chance for all to be entertained and overjoyed by the different performances here on this day, the 23rd of January 2019. Hence the importance of this contract. Oh, what is and is not off limits? So I'm guessing Frankie Boyle wasn't invited, and to show just how offensive he is, I'm going to play the one joke he made for a stand-up on Mock the Week about Princess Diana.
Okay, the next topic is the royals. Frankie.
That joke still puts me to sleep with a smile on my face. This contract has been written to ensure an environment where joy, love and acceptance is reciprocated by all. Well, that sounds really, really boring, doesn't it? By signing this contract, you are agreeing to our no-tolerance policy with regards to... Take a deep breath, everyone. Racism, sexism, classism, ageism, ableism, homophobia, biphobia, transphobia, xenophobia, Islamophobia, or anti-religion or anti-atheism. LOL. All topics must be presented in a way that is respectful and kind. It does not mean that these topics cannot be discussed, but it must be done in a respectful and non-abusive way. So I guess that rules out audience participation. Now, upon reading this, I think we can now understand why Constantine decided not to get involved. Because you've got to think, what is and is not racism is entirely subjective. The same applies to sexism, classism, ageism. I mean, can we mock the guy who tried in a Dutch court to have his age reduced legally by 20 years? Or is that ageist? Ableism, because there's nothing funny about a person in a wheelchair, ever. Homophobia, which last I checked, there aren't many comedians out there that are actually afraid of gay people, so much so that they would make an entire list of jokes on that. There are a lot of jokes that are quite funny at gay people's expenses. It's just a shame you didn't put homophobia next to Islamophobia, because that joke sets itself up really, and obviously confuses many people at the same time. Do they support the Muslim that threw the gay man off the roof? Or do they support the gay man whose skull has been caved in by gravity? Biphobia, that's a thing. Transphobia, again, subjective. Xenophobia, but we need the wall. Or anti-religion, I'm assuming that does not include Christians. Or anti-atheism, but atheists are funny. In fact, you've made it so the only thing people can mock, realistically, are politics. So I have to wonder, with so many topics in the no section, do we make jokes about people falling in love without referencing sexuality, so we don't mention names or gender? And you mentioned joy, so do we mock people for being happy, which is essentially, wow, you're all happy, I'm going to stop that now, and then finish that joke, which is obviously not a joke, by saying, yeah, this is the part where you laugh. If you didn't know, it's because you're not hipster, woke, or peng enough. I know I've used the word peng in the wrong context, but I just don't care. It's a stupid word and I want to use it. I was, by the way, trying to find jokes that were amusing, so I looked up the hashtag Muslim jokes. Most of them are shit. There's my Islamophobic remark if you want. Apparently, Twitter Muslims can't tell funnies. As a bit of a fallout from all of this, there was a rather interesting comment left by Owen Benjamin, who showed a remarkable lack of understanding about how comedians operate, but also not knowing anything that was done by Constantine in the first place. As a rather interesting FYI, a lot of comedians perform at colleges. They used to as support acts for bands. Now they do because the venues are suitable. My old university, the University of East Anglia, had hosted a number of comedians before I even left. The most famous was Mark Watson. You may not have heard of him, but he's okay. He's quite mild as a comedian. Not somebody that did offensive humour as well as, well, like earlier, Frankie Boyle. Although many people would rather go and see comedians at a bigger venue, like the Royal Theatre in the city centre. But if you're touring the country and you want to get to many venues, universities are perfect, because students in an area that is supposed to be in and of itself a safe space for everyone to be able to speak their mind freely without being chastised, vilified, demonized, and shunned, has become toxic and too PC, bruh, for everyone, which is in and of itself a bit sad. Overall, my view is, if people invite someone to come to a college to tell jokes, they must have done the research and watched this person perform. To give them a behavioural agreement form means they would have then done the research, decided they didn't like all the jokes, and simply decided, you'll do, but you're going to have to be creative. Which I think is, if you're inviting someone to come and perform for you, especially to raise money for charity and therefore them performing for free, a bit sad, because a lot of people would then instead rely on older material, which may not fall into the bracket of what you'd consider safe, especially as he grew up in Soviet Russia, and I think his anti-commie jokes might not go down with the very fresh batch of ultra-leftists who are so defensive on this subject. Not that the right is any better, but in this context we'll focus on the left, shall we? When asked to give a statement on this, he said, "I just think it reflects an attitude among a group of people at university particularly, where it seems that they have become places of indoctrination rather than learning. Students are being taught to prevent offence rather than to seek truth and pursue experiences. Universities used to be all about that, faux shizzle, but now it seems they're places where students are being taught to be woke. I think it reflects a broader issue, where increasingly there are people who value safety, or what they perceive to be safety." This is in reference to the behavioural agreement form, and he is quite right. To finish, I'm going to play a clip that Constantine, now that I've actually bothered to check how he pronounced his name because he says it in the video I'm about to play, put out a video, Constantine that is, on his Twitter, explaining what he was going to do instead of performing at London University. So I hope everyone has a lovely Sunday, and thank you all for listening.
Hello, my name is Constantine. I'm a comedian, and as you know, I recently received a letter telling me what I can and can't say at a comedy night. So tonight, I'm going to be at Comedy Unleashed at the Backyard Comedy Club here in London, and I'm going to do a set that is going to be strictly based on complying with those rules, where you're not allowed to criticize religion, atheism, and a whole bunch of other things. Come along, I'll see you there.